parents are responsible for their children. That's a concept that's already embedded within our legal system in terms of custody and also in terms of the definition of minors. Minors that are constantly within education. Education that's provided by their parents. So we say that if the enactors of this education do not enforce the necessary measures to make sure that their children do not grow into criminals, that constitutes a form of criminal negligence, and that substantial responsibility lies in the hands of the parents in making sure that the children do not become criminals or go in that path. But before we go further in today's debates, let us define a few key terms. We define responsible as legally liable. We define wrongdoings as criminal actions. And under that definition, let's set two parameters. First of all, we're going to limit this debate, obviously, to countries with rule of law and have an established legal system. Secondly, in the case of the wrongdoings of the children, obviously, children with parents, because or else the legal liability could not be established. Now, under those two parameters, side proposition brings you a two-step policy. First of all, we're not going to punish the parents for every single crime the child commits. We're only going to punish them when it is recognized that these parents have a responsibility, that their actions of inaction have constituted a form of criminal negligence, that when they did not take the necessary measures to make sure that their children did not commit the crimes. And second step of our policy, no thank you sir. We say that because these children have already grown up in a bad environment, that it is our responsibility to make sure to provide them with measures of reintegration, rehabilitation, and making sure that these children have a better education and opportunities to grow up into better adults, in which something that their parents did not provide. And because our proposition believes that it all starts at home, we bring you 4 substantive points on why this motion must stand. Firstly, responsibility on how there is criminal negligence on the hands of the parents. Secondly, feasibility, how our policy is legally feasible. Third, child reformation, the benefits that is going to be brought out to these children. And fourth of all, the argument that's going to be dealt with by our deputy in terms of adult reformation. This is going to incentivize adults to commit better actions and de-incentivize them from criminal actions. So without any further ado, let's move on to a substantive case. Our first argument on responsibility. Now we say that parents are responsible for their children. For example, if a child conducting a criminal action of school shootings, why let that child have a gun? If your teenager is outside doing drugs at 2 a.m., why not set a curfew to curtail that behavior? Yes, sir.
Do you believe that parents actively know and let their children do drugs and carry guns?
In fact, yes, I do, sir. I believe that certain parents are alcoholics. I believe certain parents are irresponsible. In fact, I believe a substantial minority of parents are very inherently responsible for the actions of their children. Because, no thank you, sir, I'm answering your POI. Because I believe, and the society provides empirical examples in which bad parenting leads to the actions of their children. And we say that there are even certain crimes that are inherently linked to bad parenting. For example, the case of prostitution. Why let your teenage daughter roam the streets and solicit sex while receiving money? We say that the parents have a common sensual responsibility in that case. If your child doesn't come back home at 5 a.m., then why not set a curfew? That's an inherent responsibility in the case of parents, and that's a matter of inaction they've constituted. And because of this, we say this constitutes criminal negligence, when these parents did not take action to prevent the actions of their children when they're fully responsible. No, thank you, sir. And then we move on to our second point. Now, having established that how there's a causal link between the actions of their parents and how lack of measures constitutes the fostering criminals, we see how in our legal system we already recognize the responsibility of criminal negligence and also bad parenting. So that's the level of analysis we're going to provide. First of all, we're going to show you how in our legal system we already recognize the responsibility of criminal negligence. For example, in the realm of corporate law, when a company cooks up its books, it's not only that company that's going to be prosecuted, but also its auditing firm that did not do its responsibility to make sure that company did not cook up its book. A key example would be Waterhouse in India, which was also prosecuted for the same example. And we say that within our legal system, we also have a method of prosecuting criminal negligence. We already have a legal system where we have district attorneys that after a policy is enacted, can set a standard, provide evidence to show how the actions of the parents constituted criminal negligence, how they didn't do their due diligence in terms of educating their children. And we believe that if we don't prosecute the parents for these actions, that we also are practicing criminal negligence. Defend that, sir.
So what we're actually doing is punishing parents for aiding and abetting crime, which is a punishment of the parent, which is a crime of the parent, not of the child.
That's very confusing, but if you're asking if we're going to punish the parents for the crime of the child, for the parents not doing something about the child, yes, that's exactly what we're doing. Because the parent is obviously responsible, as we established in our first point, in empirical examples of crimes such as school shootings, drugs, and also prostitution. We also show in the first level analysis for our first argument how our legal system already recognizes responsibility even though they weren't the direct committers of that action. So we move on to our second level analysis. Our legal system already recognizes parental responsibility in the actions of children. Now, in the case of the United Kingdom, a mother was prosecuted because she didn't bring her child to the dentist. Well, we say that's also a case of bad parenting. The child also does have the responsibility to go to the dentist and get regular checks up, as I wouldn't, but the parent also has a responsibility to make sure that her child gets regular checkups. Her child lives a healthy life. A responsibility which she didn't live up to, a responsibility that the United Kingdom held up against the parents and prosecuted. We also have the example of schools. When a child conducts in bullying or whatever informal behavior at school, it's not the sole child that is being punished, who is being called, the guardians or the parents. It is already recognized within our society, our legal systems and our educational systems, that these parents have a responsibility, and if not, a substantial effect on their children in terms of establishing of good behavior. And we say, also in the case of vandalism, if a child conducts vandalism and damage is done to certain households, it is the responsibility of the parents to pay off those damages, not the children. Now, having established the legal responsibility that's already embedded in our system, let's go on to a third and last argument, how there is child reformation on two levels. First of all, on short term. Through our second step of our policy, we can make sure that these children get the environments that they should have gotten. A system where they can grow up to be productive members of society and get the education they want. And this goes into our second level of analysis, how this has long-term effects. Now, a substantial amount of adult criminals have juvenile records, which means that their criminal lives started when they were minors. And by preempting this kind of behavior and making sure that these parents are responsible for the actions of these children, we make sure that these children do not grow up to be full-fledged criminals. We preempt crime, and we make sure that crime is decreased. The long-term effects of our policy. So ladies and gentlemen, where do you stand now? The causation link between parenting and criminal actions is evident. We've given you empirical evidence of countless examples in our real lives where bad parenting leads to criminal actions. It's already embedded in our legal systems that the parents must take responsibility for the actions of their children, and criminal negligence is a concept that is already established. And the long-term effects of preempting crime are also beneficial, and that's why you stand with that proposition. Thank you very much.